Hello and welcome back to Sanguinius 40k, your competitive Blood Angels tactics and tips channel on how to get the most out of your Sons of Sanguinius on the tabletop. In today's episode, we are going to be focusing on my overall journey through the Motor City Mayhem this past weekend. I believe it was May 13th to 15th, if I'm not mistaken. And I'll be kind of running through each of my games and the few that were on stream. I'll definitely be diving into a bit more with some pictures and just my takes on the game state and essentially how I approach the missions from a tactical standpoint. And hopefully this will definitely help maybe some of you along the way with why the decisions I was making or maybe things you can ponder the next time you guys are taking your armies on the tabletop. So without further ado, let's dive right on in. So before we dive into the matchups, I just want to say an absolutely huge shout out to the Death or Glory group. They hosted the event, Motor City Mayhem, and it was just smoothly run top to bottom. Tom and Pete, the gentlemen obviously running it, did an amazing job. Super clean, super fun. Everything just felt so above table, and it really brought the best out of what I thought a lot of the players there. So always great to see from from gentlemen such as them who are also great at the game. So without further ado, now we'll kind of dive on into the matchups, and I'll just run through them decently. And obviously, if there's any more questions or anything beyond these explanations, as always, please like, share, and comment, and maybe I can dive into things a bit deeper with you guys in the comment section. So here we go. And also, I just wanted to preface by saying that this was actually my first ever event over the border from Canada, so definitely a bit nerve-wracking going into it, and I wasn't really sure what to expect, but definitely was excited to get going. So the first matchup went up on the Friday morning, and I got paired into a gentleman by the name of Kyle Vanderby. So thanks for a great game, Kyle. And the army he was running absolutely terrified me because for those who play Blood Angels, Custodians aren't exactly the best matchup, and I got paired into them, so it was a bit on the back foot, I felt, without even beginning the game. And I figured to myself, as long as he doesn't have too many bikes, there should be some play, especially on mission 11, which is, I believe, recover the relics. We can see what I can do. But unfortunately, he had 17 bikes as emissaries, so he was able to essentially charge me turn one with a squad of 6 bikes. So long story short, definitely had to see if I can turn things around. The pressure was on early, but fortunately I've had a lot of practice in terms of understanding what it's like to be overwhelmed in certain scenarios just by playing into hyper aggressive armies. So I was able to set up a quite defensive position. Was able to finagle a few key heroic interventions with a character and sanguinary guard in order to not take as many losses. Obviously, a few dice did help going my way, but overall was able to survive a pretty big hit. And actually, I believe it was bottom of turn 1, I was able to kill all 6 bikes and comfortably not lose too many resources. So the game essentially snowballed a bit from there, but we kind of both knew at that point that's the way it would end up going. So when the dust settled, I was able to pull out the win 91-67. So definitely a bit of a surprise, actually, just because of my history into Custody. It's always been tough, always been super close for the most part. But again, thank you to Kyle. Super great game. Really fun opponent. We were connecting before the game, having a blast. I think the table next to us was also vibing with us too, just because we were talking lore at many points, and I am a fluff bunny, believe it or not. As you know, I'm a super fan of the Blood Angels, so definitely a fun game, and that brought me to 1-0 going into round 2 by a gentleman of the name Joshua Gilbert with his Raven Guard. So this was actually a really interesting game because he was using a hyper-aggressive Raven Guard successor army it was 30 Vanguard veterans, multiple weapons within, hammers, claws, chainswords, as well as 10 relic terminators. I forget their loadouts entirely, but very killy, both in close combat and tons of volume from Stormbolters. So, I wasn't really sure how this game would go, and obviously, I really knew what this was all about in terms of how Raven Guard can take advantage of an early, first turn, pressure and advantage if they were able to go first. So I was definitely playing super defensive, super cagey in terms of my deployment, just in case he was able to go first. But we talked about it before the game, and we knew if he goes first, this game could end pretty quickly. So we're playing mission 13, and we set up the board, and I'm obviously deploying defensively. I'm trying to mitigate how much pressure he can put into me if he were to go first by deploying some incursors in the mid board. Of course, trying to screen him out a bit, but just by the nature of the pre-game moves, it's very, very difficult to do that, as there's not many restrictions in terms of where the second move can go, obviously, because it's just a normal movement phase at that point. So was definitely scary, was definitely something that, hasn't happened to me in a long time, getting charged by, I want to say, 30 Vanguard Vets and 10 Relic Terminators in one turn, but fortunately, my defensive position definitely paid off. I was able to take the hit. I believe I only lost... I want to say about maybe 3-4 units, which I know sounds bad, and it was probably roughly, I'm not sure, maybe 500 points of my army, but I knew at that point, though, that the hit back that I could take advantage of would do the job. So just to sum up, the rest of that game, because it did end, unfortunately, for Joshua quite quickly after that. I was able to kill all 30 Vanguard veterans, all 10 Relic Terminators, and all 3 characters. And at that point, that pretty much is the army. So we basically just kind of, talk things out from there. And, he was a good sport about everything. And obviously, I'm sure it's rare that you lose that much in a turn. So, he handled it super well. But we talked about how he could have slowed that game down, and he could have, definitely given me a way tighter game. So, the score did end up being 81-56 for me. 81 because I made a rookie mistake, and I guess the Black Rage unfortunately took over me when I was charged by that many models, and I just so happened to kill every single character of his when I took Psychic Interrogation. So, definitely learned my lesson there, and fortunately, that did not cost me top 8, but I only made it in by 2 points, which is obviously spoiler alert. So now I'm 2-0 on day 1. Definitely a bit surprising, but I knew that I hadn't played Tyranids or any of the pointy-eared factions yet, or some of the big contenders. So I figured I just need to count my blessings in the meantime and see when those fall into my lap. And sure enough, it happened in round 3 on the scouring of all missions, which I understand got better, but definitely a mission that you don't really want to go into those tough actions against, just due to the nature of the mission and how aggressive it can be. As I'm someone, and my faction in general, the way I've built it is something that you want to slow down the game as much as possible. So got paired into Tyranids, a super nice guy named Brian Horton. I'm sure many of you already know who he is, and we had an amazing game, and just talked everything out in terms of just, these are my intentions, this is what we're going to do, did we make any mistakes, let's go back and fix them, and we had a blast for the 2 hours we were there. This was also, unfortunately, my first ever rep into the new Tyranids, so probably poor preparation on my part, but I did do a lot of theorizing and theory crafting of how I would approach the matchup, and I did some practice at home in terms of setting up the board and understanding what the army can do at a very high level, and what tricks it could really do into me to take advantage of any maybe weak points that I may have. So I do think that definitely did pay off. And, huge shout out to, fellow team member on Team Canada, Dustin Henshaw from the Stutter Scrub podcast. We went over a couple of key things that I would actually need to be aware of in that game. Just because of how fantastic he is of a player. So he enlightened me on a few things that I wasn't really fully aware of. We kind of talked through some target priority things, and I think the key message that I'm kind of getting across here is that if you're not fully comfortable with something, just make sure you reach out and don't feel like you have to check your ego or have an ego about it. So in a nutshell, what basically I had to do was, as I mentioned, try and slow the game down as much as possible in terms of the tempo of it, making sure my resources weren't being spent too quickly. And it did lead to a cagey game, but I found very quickly that my theorizing and my actual thought process behind the approach of the game into this army with mine, what was actually working at about the halfway point of it. So I just knew that I had to control the game in terms of my scoring and mitigate how much he could score. And obviously Brian can vouch for this, but I did get off, I think it was 4 denies on his Psychic Interrogation, so... Sorry, Brian, I don't know what to say. The dice were the dice, but, fortunately, that wasn't the reason why I won the game, but obviously opened up the score a bit more than it should have been. So I was actually able to take my first ever game into the new tier NIDS, Leviathan NIDS, by a score of 93-70. But again, Brian, thanks for an amazing game, and it gave me some confidence going into round 4. So that wraps up day 1. Definitely not an easy day, but was fortunate to get some things going my way in a lot of the games. So finished the day 3-0. I was feeling pretty well about my performances. Even when you win games, though, I was still picking things apart afterwards of how I could have improved, maybe where I missed out on points. Now I know when you're winning with like a 90 plus, you might be thinking, well, that's pretty good, but there's always ways to improve on your game, win or lose. So kind of went back to the drawing board in the evening before pairings went up again, and was excited to take on what I knew was going to be a very challenging day 2 for me. And lo and behold, the pairings went up on Friday night, and I saw that I was playing TJ Lanigan on Abandoned Sanctuaries, which is an awful mission for many people, but Blood Angels specifically, I feel, into his Thousand Suns. So that was going to be amazing. So we were actually on stream, the Death or Glory stream, which you obviously can catch on YouTube, the recorded game of it. So definitely I do advise that if you want to see how that game played out, I advise you to watch the whole game. Also, huge shout out to Trevi from Tactical Tortoise for being a great shoutcaster, as well as Lyle Dixon. The two of them were absolute troopers all weekend, and definitely wouldn't have been possible to have such a great event without gentlemen such as them. So thank you for that. But what we're seeing in this picture here is essentially just the deployment, and I had to be very cautious with how I approached this game, just from the sheer fact that I knew that it would be very difficult to play into him, as I wouldn't be able to have any forward pressure because Abandoned Sanctuaries doesn't allow you to. So he was feeling very comfortable not getting charged by Death Company turn 1, as he mentioned to me. But, overall, though, start to finish, that game was amazing. He was an amazing opponent. Everything was just talked about. We made sure we were always on the same page about if there was any rules interaction we didn't agree with, we would just simply ask a judge, because that happens. And one thing I do want to, make known is that if there's a simple interaction that you guys can't really find, a simple, answer about, never hesitate to simply ask someone. And just because you're getting a judge involved doesn't mean it's a contentious game. It doesn't mean that the game has taken a turn for the worst and now you're playing the big bad guy in the room. It's nothing to do with that. Answers need to be brought to the table, and that's how you get them in a fair manner. So we definitely did that, I think once or maybe twice maximum, but otherwise the game was super fantastic. And back to the tactical side of it, it was very nerve-wracking going in, as I knew he was a fantastic player, and hopefully I'm not getting this wrong, but he ended up going on to win best overall at the event. So absolute gem on his end. So after a few early KG turns and seeing how the game was progressing, this led to a medium push, I want to say, on my end, where on the top left of the screen, I had actually made a not poor decision, but a decision that didn't have to be made, where I charged Death Company into Scarab Occult Terminators, and I completely whiffed, killing, I believe, 1 or 2, and he turned around and obviously easily wiped them. So I gave him a bit of movement that I didn't need to give him. Definitely thought I was going to hurt them a lot more, maybe down to 4, but dice can be fickle, and you can never blame them. So that was a bit unfortunate, but however, the proper side of this and the play that did help me was the fact that I was able to bring a Sanguinary Guard squad, as you guys can see on the screen, to the right objective in the middle of the board, and was able to wrap some incursors with them. So I knew that he was going to be able to have a punchback or some sort of hitback, which he did. And as you can see on the far right of the screen, almost off camera, is actually 10 Scarab Occult Terminators lining up shots into my Sanguinary Guard. But essentially what progresses to happen from here is, due to my position on the board and actually using that L to my advantage in a very offensive position, he only killed 5 out of the 7 Sanguinary Guard. And if you guys can picture, the 2 that are closest to the ruin and also closest to the Rubric Marines in the center of the board, they had survived, and I don't think he budgeted them surviving. And I was able to absolutely have a massive swing in that sense of the game, where I actually heroically intervened into those Rubric Marines in the center of the board with the 2, with Chapter Master rerolls, picking up all 5 of them, and therefore denying him a few points. and actually helping me get an 8 on primary when I most likely shouldn't have. So it was a very big swing in the game, and obviously when you guys hear the final score, you'll understand why. But definitely was unfortunate to see the game shake up to a swing like that. But he realized it was a mistake on his end. They had no business even being there to begin with in terms of actual positioning. And from there, we obviously played things out to see where things would go. So essentially, just to conclude how this game went, that did cause a big swing. As you can see in the middle of the board, I placed the Librarian and Incursors there. Scouts actually were the heroes of this game and retrieved data for me, rolling a 4 on the dice, and there was 4 models left, so absolutely huge. Again, that could have been a fail point right there. But as you can see, the arrows pointing to the top right of the screen, my Sanguinary Guard had traveled to that location. I've never had this happen before, but I rolled 7 dice for Hammer of Wrath and rolled all 4-ups, doing 7 mortal wounds to the Scarab Cult Terminators. I may have picked up 1 from Eradicator shooting, which were in the bottom right corner, which is, you can kind of not really see from the angle. But those 7 definitely hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and wounding on 2s, I think caused something like 32 wounds after all was said and done. I rolled pretty well there, and was able to pick up all 10 of those Scarab Cult Terminators in one go. And from there, we essentially realized that we did the entire math that if he had everything go his way for the rest of the game, with all of his secondaries maxing, that he would get an 89, and I was already locked into essentially a 93. So again, massive shout out to TJ, amazing sport, great general, and I have to count my blessings for coming away with a 4-point win against someone of his caliber. So definitely was excited, and that did push me to 4-0, which I was kind of in shock myself because of the meta and the skill level of the players that I was going to. But I do believe in myself, and I never count myself out of any game, no matter how up against the wall it may seem. So was really eager to see how far I could take this, and went into round 5 4-0. So that was a really fun thing to really go into. So now I'm going into round 5 against a gentleman by the name of Joshua Minnick. From what I heard, obviously, I heard great things about him in terms of, a gentleman at the table. He played against my best friend actually round 1, and he was playing Kraken Nids into GSC, so he was able to, pull that one out for him. So definitely was interested to see how the game would go. I had played Leviathan, but never Kraken, and I heard Kraken was quite quick for obvious reasons. And sure enough, we were playing Tide of Conviction, which was Dawn of War, and made us start pretty close to each other. So I knew that would be a really tough game, and I figured, again, I'm even fortunate to be in the situation that I'm in, 4-0. So let's just see how many points I can take out of this one, and how many, how I can really play the game into him, and see if I can leverage some of my skill to mitigate some of his scoring. So was definitely very interested to see how that would go, and I ended up going first, which again I did not want to do. So knowing that I was going first, I had to leverage any advantage that I could get. So essentially what I did was, at a very high level explanation, I was able to pick a side of the board to focus my army on, and I knew he had 2 Maliceptors located in 2 different areas, which was smart on his perspective, in my opinion. But what I did was I used that one side of the board to actually hem the one in that was closest to my army by move blocking them with either Death Company, or in later turns I was planning on doing something with aggressors, planning on something with scouts. So was fortunately able to mitigate a lot of the early Maliceptor damage and able to isolate a lot of those key units of his that I don't think he really expected, especially playing against Blood Angels. So I was able to do that, and we kind of quickly saw that when monsters were approaching me in these sort of half full strength paces with like 1 or 2 coming at me, I was actually able to deal with them quite well. So to conclude the matchup, I was actually, I felt very fortunate to come away with a victory. Josh is a great player, so I knew I definitely had to play with caution and play that kind of KG game style, which I'm accustomed to. Just seeing where I could interact on the board and how I was able to just pick off his monsters 1 or 2 at a time in some cases. But for the most part, he was just as shocked as maybe I was, because I was able to really start picking up a lot more monsters than I think he's used to losing. Just because of the nature of how I positioned my army, which is kind of tough to explain just by voice. It's more something that has to be shown on the table, but was able to actually, pull out the 94 to 81. And we talked things out, obviously, at the end, just in terms of what scores we were kind of able to get, because, I'm not someone who just gives out points or anything like that. We were playing to our best capabilities for 5 turns, and we're just kind of saying, okay, we can go like this. This is how we can push things. Kind of similar to what happened with TJ, and that's how the scoreline. So now that that game was over, I was very fortunate to be, at that point 5-0. Going into round 6 into a gentleman by the name of Monik Gudimani. I hope I'm saying that correct. He's obviously a very good player. He was actually 5-0 himself, and had 500 points from 500 points going into the round. So we actually had a quick little chuckle over the fact that I said, hey, if I could just give you 99, I would be quite happy with this game. So we were playing mission 33. And as you can see here in the deployment, I was playing, my typical game that I play, and he knew that he didn't need to overextend and maybe jeopardize the fact that I could capitalize on him pushing into me too hard. So maybe he spoke with, Josh, because I'm pretty sure they're on the same Death and Glory team. Not too quite sure about that, so just speculation. But he knew I could, essentially make his units pay depending on how we pushed. So he was also just in, conservative mode in terms of just getting the points he needed to ensure that he could make it into the top 8. And, once he achieved that, then he could push really hard to me and try and hurt me in the game. But until that point, it was a bit cagey, as we can see here. This is just the deployment. And I knew he could get very aggressive into me. And on this mission, I believe it's called Precious Artifacts, going second would be huge. And, I was fortunate enough to go second in this mission. And on stream, it was a lot of fun. Joe from Wargames Live is just an absolute gentleman. So shout out to Joe. And, just in general, the way it was, conducted the entire time from start to finish was just a lot of fun. And hopefully for all of you who watched that game, I hope you did enjoy. Tried my best to, represent our boys well on that stream. And, just in general, knew that the game would be super difficult, especially going into a person of his caliber. So forward fasting a bit to the midpoint of the game, as you can see here, Monik was able to push very aggressively into me, especially taking over the middle of the board. At this point, he was in also denial mode, so he was trying to obviously open up the gap as big as possible, and of course, my job was to mitigate that where and when I could. So definitely was not easy to play into this army. Obviously, I know Tyranids are the way they are, but he was obviously, intelligent on this mission, and he knew what to do. So he made a big push, and, in hindsight, I do understand what the mistake was that I made, and I think I was able to win the game if it did go my way, and I think I understand how to do that next time. But I just undercommitted to the Tyranid Warriors, thinking that I would kill more than I did. Even with the -1 damage, I did account for that, but in hindsight, an overcommitment should have happened on this turn, if anything. I'm sure a lot of you at home are already thought about that, but you have to keep in mind that in the middle of that game, when you're trying to keep all your assets alive, you're trying to think about the most split decision critical moments of a game that could reward you. And I definitely knew right away where I could have, improved in that moment. So at least that was good that I acknowledged that at least, and didn't think, oh, well, the dice screwed me or anything like that, because you really can't blame dice. It is a dice game, and that's it is how it is. But unfortunately, in this exact moment on the screen here, I was not able to shift as many Tyranid Warriors off the middle as I was hoping for. He was able to swing back, therefore killing the Sanguinary Guard, and therefore causing a pretty big swing in the game. And we kind of did the math after quickly, and if this had gone my way, I was actually able to win the game 96-90. So a bit disappointing there, obviously, but losing overall 92-94 to a player of his caliber, and obviously him being the highest ranked player going into the top 8, I was super ecstatic about it. And obviously the fact that I did score as high as I did by just playing it out to the last drop, so to speak, of Sanguinius's blood, I was able to creep into the top 8, and was super happy with the achievement, as it was my first time playing in an event with a top 8 cut. So very cool experience from that point. So at this point, I was 5-1 going into day 3, and the fact that I'm even saying day 3 was already an achievement, making it into the top 8. I believe I finished in 7th, and again, just squeezed in because of the ability to score as many points as I did, essentially, kind of making up for tossing away those 15 points back in game 2. So kind of evened out, if you ask me, but that's my biased opinion. No, but all jokes aside, was super, humbled and honored to just play the game that I do on a weekly basis. What I call the right way to play 40K. And for those of you who watch the game, you will understand. And for those of you who haven't, I do encourage you to watch the game, because I'm a big, just advocate of playing the game always above board. Take backs doesn't mean you're giving your opponent the win. It's just playing the game in a proper manner that I think should be more custom in the hobby, in my opinion. So in the quarterfinals, we were playing Mission 12, which I believe was Tear Down Their Icons. And I was paired into a gentleman by the name of Kyle Perry. So, shout out to Kyle. What a gentleman at the table. We played that game thoroughly, in a fantastic way, and he's obviously a great general. Wouldn't have been in top 8 if he wasn't. He definitely earned that spot, so I mean, kudos to him. And actually the entire West Coast gang, I didn't get to meet all of them, but I just kept hearing that they were great individuals to play against, and Kyle obviously was an embodiment of that, so good job on him. He was playing an interesting list, which was, definitely had the tools to play the game at a very high level. But believe it or not, I actually thought that I had the tools to deal with him, and he kind of knew that. So we played pretty cagey early on until about turn 2. Now, I know turn 2 is obviously very early in the game, so obviously I do get that. But just because of the state of the game in terms of how I could foresee the game going, and him going second on a mission like that, did require me to push to the middle. Which I did, and I did that, in a calculated approach. And for those of you who do want to watch the game, that was also on the Death or Glory stream, I believe it was. So yeah, feel free to reach out. But there were a couple of, there was one big mistake I unfortunately made on my end, and again, that's totally on me. I don't know if it was fatigue or just me, wanting to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I just misinterpreted how one of the rules worked, which was null zone, and actually kind of ruled it in his favor in terms of how he was pulling models. But you live and learn. It happens. We played it how it was in the moment, both knowing how it worked in the way that I described it. So I'm actually happy about that. So these two people weren't on different pages. We were both on the same page, and we kind of went with it. So again, no upsets there. So essentially, to conclude how that matchup went, he was obviously able to take it. I think it was 86-75. So again, huge congratulations to Kyle as he proceeded to go on to the semifinals. Definitely deservedly so. We can always look back on the game and say, well, if the dice didn't, go the way it did, and for those on stream, you might be wondering, how did all your sanguinary guard die on the one turn when, he brought all the shuriken cannons to the middle? I was rolling 2-up saves, and I was rolling lots of ones, and it happens, and it's okay. You just have to understand that there's always a risk to any play you make in 40K, and even that 5-inch charge sometimes with a reroll isn't guaranteed. So just understand that there needs to be, backup plans or contingencies in place to really see out a win, especially against a tough opponent with a tough army. So, Kyle and I had a great discussion after the game. He knew his army was better than mine on paper, but that doesn't mean mine doesn't have any play into it. There was a ton, and it was a great game overall. And with that brings me to the conclusion of the event. What I would consider obviously a great outing, considering that I finished in 6th place with Blood Angels at the event. Pretty much just behind, I think it was 4 Tyranids and obviously Kyle with his Harlequins. So, couldn't have asked for a better weekend in terms of not only the game, but in terms of the individuals that I met along the way. Met a lot of really great players, a lot of great characters, super nice individuals. And really that's kind of what I believe the hobby is truly about at its core. And I know we obviously are competitive, those who are in the competitive scene, but it's really great to see just the actual people invested in it, just caring so much about it from, top to bottom. So again, great event overall, really well run. I know top 8 was, everything I could have asked for and more. And also, another, feather on the cap, I was able to take home Best Angels of Death, which is, of course, Space Marines. So again, really cool award that I was able to bring home to the shelf, for example, or to say the least. But definitely a humbling experience. And, although I was able to do so well, it made me hungry to get better and only do better next time. And I know obviously this doesn't mean I'm going to make top 8 every time. For all I know, I could maybe never make top 8, but that's not the point of it. The point is that you have to understand your goals and your passion within the hobby, and just be realistic at all times. And, just keep doing your best, and keep practicing hard, and putting the work in. So, for those of you at home that might be struggling with Blood Angels and maybe have lost faith at times, and, you just have that rut, I promise you that if you do put the work in, you can get over that hump. It just requires maybe a little bit more effort than you might be thinking. And I know for obviously some of you people, it might not be possible, and that's completely okay, but you just have to understand that at that point. So again, just thank you again for everyone that supported me along the weekend. I received, countless messages on Facebook and in different groups that I'm a part of. Huge shout out to, my Team Canada boys in our group chat. They were absolutely loving every minute of it and supporting me along the way. And honestly, without that support system, I don't get as far as I did, because it was just like I always had, a couple of people, helping me out literally, where, for example, Nick Blackburn, fellow teammate, we spoke, what was it, Friday night, just for a little bit, woke up to a really nice message of some information on how to play into T-Suns just a little bit better than maybe I was, comfortable with. So again, just the support system around you does really elevate your game and success, in my opinion. So definitely, important to find a good group of individuals that are like-minded with similar goals. So, really looking forward to my next event, just to explain the next couple of things coming up for me. So my next steps from here, I was actually, as of time of making this video, I recorded a podcast last night for a really great group of individuals running a podcast out of Ontario, Canada, called Hump Day 40K. For those of you who are really looking forward to a good time on a podcast, that's definitely the place to be. And we did talk about my run as well. Game per game, and had fun with it. So, please check them out. Like I said, Hump Day 40K. Run by, again, a couple of fantastic players from Canada. So definitely get a cool perspective on the game from them. Also afterwards, I do have a couple of podcasts that I was invited to be on lined up. So, more to come from them, which I will hopefully share in the future on the various pages that I'm a part of. And my next GT is going to be coming up mid-June, and hopefully I can, see what I could do there in the good old Canadian meta. So, as always, guys, thank you so much for all the support. I do mean that in every sense of the word. Couldn't have done it without getting all those messages. So it was really great to see, and really, really cool overall. But yeah, again, please like, share, subscribe, and always feel free to reach out, comment, on any way that you think I can improve the content, just to deliver better things for you. Obviously, I'm doing the best I can with the time that I have. But again, any questions, I'll try and get back to you in the comment section below, and we can obviously chat there. But until next time, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you later.